Everybody, thanks so much for listening to our podcast. First timers, please subscribe. Trying to get this out to as many people. We're seeing the numbers going up, and we're trying to keep bringing these good guests on. We have a real good guest on today. He is running in Val Deming's seat. I know a lot of Florida listeners will know her. She's obviously running for U.S. Senate against Lil Marco Rubio. And we'll talk about that in general. But Jeff Boone is on the program, former New Yorker. So he definitely knows what's going on in Florida, in New York, and we're going to talk about all these different issues. He's running for Congress in District 10 over in Orlando. Jeff, it's been a pleasure. I'm so grateful you're on. You are a dynamo, and for anybody that doesn't know this, I just was in a meeting a couple days back with Jeff, and he was truth-telling in that meeting, and I'm sure he's going to truth-tell now. So, Jeff Boone, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob, for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking about our campaign and issues facing our congressional district and talking about what's most important to you as well as all the listeners and what's important upcoming for Democrats as well as all the different districts.
So let's talk a little bit before we get into all the policy and politics. Let's talk a little bit about you, Jeff. Jeff, tell the viewers a little bit about you growing up in New York and then moving down here to Florida.
Sure. I actually grew up in Harlem, New York. My parents were both first generation college HBCs, North Carolina Central, dad from New York, basketball scholarship, mom from North Carolina. And dad really, his father sent him to college shining shoes. And my grandmother sent my mother as maid. And then they met up and they we grew up in New York City. My father also coached and refereed and worked with other family members that were in law enforcement, starting the Harlem Police Athletic League, kept a lot of kids off the streets though. And a lot of us were first generations, either college or first generation integrated colleges. I went on and became student government president, the first African-American student government president of my middle school, St. James Middle School, as well as Cardinal High School, in the Bronx, New York, and then Colgate University, first African-American student government president. And went to Colgate, economics major, NYU for a grad school major, focusing on finance, management, marketing. But I've always had a good sense of community as working with kids and working with youth and engaging them in social, recreational, as well as educational activities and so forth, though. And when it came down here, we just continued doing the same thing, my wife and I. I worked in Wall Street as a corporate banker, started my career at the Federal Reserve. I also worked at Chase and First Chicago and American Express, though. So I understand finance, money, and banking. And I think a lot of our solutions that we're going to need going forward are going to rely upon the public and the private sector working together to help educate, train, employ, house the community members, though. And it's going to take business solutions. And I can say to you one thing for sure, Rob, not only am I the only moderate in this upcoming election, though, in our district, I'm also the only candidate with any financial business and coaching experience, too.
Right. And I think that works well because I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of financial problems. There already are, for that matter. Right. And I'm worried about a housing crisis coming on. I talk to these people. There's a lot of people that say, obviously, what goes up must come down. This could hit huge in Florida like it did back in 2008. So since you're just talking about your financial background in general, what do you feel like this? With all this inflation, as far as the housing market, inflation at supermarkets, gas prices are going up, everything is up. People are working. Some have good jobs. A lot of people in Florida have those service industry jobs. Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, a restaurant, hotel jobs. They're not making huge amounts of money, and there's not a lot of affordable housing. So I know we just went in 100 different directions there, but just to bring it back home, how are we going to deal with these problems? Because if they haven't exploded already, they're about to explode, and it's going to be crazy.
You have to look at the congressperson as almost being a mayor of a congressional district and concerned about all the different services and what's available for the community residents and so forth, though. In this post-COVID economy, a lot of things are changing from the brick and mortar that you had with the tourism and the hospitality industry, with call center jobs. They're going to be more remote working as well, and they're going to make that saving on the brick and mortar. They're going to send the computers and the laptops and so forth, though, to the professionals to work at home. But they have to have that discipline as well, too, to be able to work from home as well, too. So we're going to need that job training, more funding for job training, to be able to also convert not just from the hospitality tourism industries, but also some of the fast growing tech healthcare and life science industries in Orlando right here in this area too. And then we have to think about with the public and private sector working together, and we have to leverage, I want to leverage my business experience to be able to market the tax breaks for companies for investing and creating jobs in Orlando area and the distressed communities as well. And then also donating towards community development, real estate and housing projects though. We need more affordable housing, not just in single family homes though, but we all, and first time home buyers, but also and also public housing as well too. And then tax breaks for creating for job creating companies though in the research area though for research expenses in defense, aviation, the marine and the life science industries though. So that's kind of, you know, looking at just the job creation part too, but you know, the infrastructure of all things is education system. And we need to make improvements there too. And the part of that Build Back America plan for the teacher salaries and pre-K education, tutoring, after school programs though. I'm really looking at community college as well too, free community. We just gave kids 12 years of public school with 2 more years of community college hurt. Some of them will be able to get their AA degrees and think about even going on to college for the 4-year degree. So in seeing that and trusting the process of education helps employment to be able to afford the things you want with housing and so forth though. And looking at our housing market, as you said, just housing alone, we are behind the national average though, which is about 65%. We're about 58, 59% though. So just funding in terms of home ownership loans though for families, and you've got a lot of millennials now are starting to work and people in their 20s. And the group I was talking with right now, just a couple of days, your group, the young Democrats, people up in their 30s, they're starting their families as well too, want to be able to buy homes though, want to be able to branch off from family though, and to be able to do that. So we've got a lot going on in the economy that can be fragile on one side, but also we're seeing inflation. We're seeing, look at your supermarket. The shelves are starting to look empty in certain spots though, with the supply chain and labor shortage as well too. And people are looking at those jobs and saying, are they safe or being close together, or do I want to work from home? And so it has to really look at the economics, the law of supply and demand. How much is it paying? How much is it worth? And then can I look at something, maybe work from home? So a lot of that's kind of in flux right now where people are making decisions though. But we do know that, you know, it's important to be able to keep the economy open, and it's important to start building this infrastructure correctly, be able to help one end of our district from the privileged to the impoverished.
Mm-hmm. You know, the Democratic Party is a big tent party, and I think that it needs to be. My question to you is, and you just talked, and I was at the group meeting, as you just stated, that, you know, with the young Democrats, we see a lot of young people, and they're Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren voters. Although I got to give the young people credit, they did help Joe Biden get over the top in the 2020 election, which is fair to say. My question is, as a person that's worked on Wall Street, I understand, you know, finances. I agree that somebody, you know, we need to get people up there that know what the hell is going on with the country's finances. But how are you going to get to these voters in a district where there's a lot of young voters,
right?
And there are a lot of those young Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. You know, I think back to Occupy Wall Street in New York,
Right.
your home neck of the woods, and a lot of these people believe in those policies. And they might think of you as a person that's for those Wall Street big bank 2008 crisis policies. So
Right.
how are you going to get those young voters to vote for you with kind of that background, which in a way it's good, but in a way it could backfire?
Right. Well, first of all, I'm a Democrat though, so I'm certainly in favor of consumer protections as well too, truth in lending though, and also, you know, what I talked about that night though about student loan debt relief though, and making sure we don't have predatory lenders though, like Navient with the $1.7 billion settlement that they had in terms of their predatory lending for students though. So owing the government shouldn't be worse than owing a loan shark though, or a student loan shark, and making sure that the government and its agencies all are honest in terms of its lending policies as well too. But also I think we do need to utilize the business experience though, in terms of development, real estate projects and so forth though, trying to make sure that it is that type of return on investment, return on taxpayer funded dollars, funded projects as well too, to make sure that they're really trickling down to the people that need it though. And so I think we, you know, when you come to work, you have the Democrats and Republicans. and there's two circles, but they work from their shared space in those circles though. And that's what makes the companies work right. And that's what needs to start happening in Congress as well too, between those two circles. Can we just at least get the part where the circles connect? Can we at least get that to trickle down? Can we pass that legislation? You know, I don't care if it's piecemeal or a line out of veto, let's just start passing something that can trickle down and help the American people. And as far as as you said, the young and the Bernie Sanders, I mean, a lot of people enter the Democratic Party in politics, especially through the liberal wing. My parents did too during the 60s and the sit-ins. And the bus rides and so forth, and then protesting from the Woolworth stores like that, and so they were the liberal wing as well too. And you evolve through the process or through the party. You might be liberal when you're younger, more moderate, or when you become a parent and owning homes and things like that, and think about your kids' college though. But you still appreciate the energy of the liberal wing. In terms of the ideas that they bring, in terms of the youth and so forth, though. And Kennedy, John F. Kennedy inspired a whole young generation of politicians as well, too. He even started things like the Peace Corps and so forth, though, getting people involved, though. So what's important, though, is that that we as community leaders have coattails to start developing the next generation of leaders as well too, and not just sit there and try to have it all for ourselves and never want to leave office and so forth. Make sure we're developing the other people that are coming up and coming straight out of college as well too, that want to get involved in politics, and be excited for them to want to do that as well too, regardless if they're a liberal or moderate or conservative Democrat though, long as they want to be blue.
Jeff Boone here on Fire Breathing Rob. Again, the website, jeffbooneforcongress.com. He's running for District 10, Val Deming's old seat over in Orlando. Since you teed it up for me, I got to ask you this question. You know, you've heard President Trump, when he was in power, talk about term limits. He didn't do anything about it. I don't think a Democrat or a Republican will do anything about it, because most of them are looking to feed their pockets. And like you just said, there's Democrats that are 80 and 90 years old that are in the House and the Senate, as there are Republicans that are 80 and 90 years old. And some of them even die in power, which I think is pretty sick and disgusting for our country. As a person running for this office, if you do win, and we hope you win, Jeff, when you win, will you kind of submit to the voters of District 10 and say, hey, I'm going to only run for 2, 3, 4 terms, and then I'm going to either move up or move out?
Well, I would hope to be able to serve the community as long as they want me there. And I think that one thing that you have with the democratic process, and certainly primaries and challenges and so forth, though, that it gives the voters the opportunity to hire, fire, re-elect somebody, and they decide whether or not they're going to term that candidate out. I think it's important to also keep fresh in terms of ideas, be current in terms of technology, and certainly being able to demonstrate that to your stakeholders and constituents, though. They're the people that you serve, they're your customers. And the customers start feeling that you're starting to not be as sharp as possible, then it's up to them to certainly give consideration to others as well, too. But I'm not looking to be one of those persons that holds on till I can't even think anymore, you know? And I'm also not really one to say that people should retire early, though, because I don't want to feel like it's age discrimination either, though. Let the process play out, and each situation is unique and different, though. And some people serve distinguishingly well, long, just like a lot of Supreme Court justices and so forth, though.
Jeff, I want to go into this. You know, the Great Resignation is still upon us. As a person that's dealt with Wall Street, and I know you've never saw probably any of this before because we all haven't. This is kind of a new phenomenon to the country due to COVID, that people like working from home. It's a flexible schedule. They don't have to drive to work. They don't have to pay to park and do everything else in the kitchen sink. Do you see this going on for quite a long time with businesses that they're just going to say, hey, it's cheaper for them too, because if they got a high rise in Orlando, they don't have to pay the rent if they're just letting people work from home.
We're all adapting, but what you have had come out of this COVID is the remote worker and student.
Yeah.
You know, first it was the students, the younger kids, and parents had to help those kids on the younger grades as well too, grade school, middle school, kind of work from home and be the teacher and the tutor. So it kind of brought them together, and then as they bring them back and forth, but the schools have to have an emergency remote plan. And then the workforce, now we've kind of adjusted to the most you probably see is some hybrid. It does save on the light bill. It does save on, it's not needing as much office space though. Employees like it, they probably work harder because they don't want to lose the privilege. And it does save on certainly expenses, gas as well too, and lunch, breakfast, you just roll out of your bed into your office. A lot of people like that though as well. So I think also when you look at supply and demand, labor is kind of saying that we like working from home. Some people actually got up and moved during these times while they're working from Florida. They may not be going back. So try to keep those people. You probably let them work from home a little bit more. And you certainly have them as long as productivity is there where it needs to be. Companies are very happy though. And they've made their adjustments too. There's been some, unfortunately, a lot of companies in the very beginning let employees go as well too. And hopefully some of those employees have been able to find placement as well, but they've become a little bit leaner. So the companies have adjusted in size. So now we need to make sure for those that are dangling out there in terms of no employment, that there is money to help give them job training though. To take time, maybe even getting certifications while you're out of work right now as well too, or when going back though, if you're working part-time or full-time, to have money for people just trying to work to better themselves, and being able to give that, and really thinking about that community college though, where just an AA degree and maybe a little bit more job focus on that, taking people with some AA degrees as well too.
Jeff Boone for Congress.com. Jeff, I know this is a pretty Democratic district, but what I'm worried about, and I'm listening to different podcasts, I don't watch too much mainstream media because I feel like it's kind of a regurgitation of everything and every show. But I listen to different podcasts, progressives, moderates, conservatives in general, and it just looks like 2022 is going to be a bloodbath for Democrats due to this defunding the police, the CRT, the woke politics, the identity politics. Are you worried about this? Maybe not so much in your race because it's more of a Democratic district, but for other people around the state of Florida, the governor's race, the Senate race too?
Well, a House Democrat once said, Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local.
Right.
So the first thing you do is take care of your local politics though, and shore up that area, try to make sure you only want to run it for one office. But you also have concerns for the party as well too. I'm a moderate Democrat. Part of my platform has been all along, and it says it on my website, and I've said it in every speech, and I'm getting around to it right now. But increased funding to improve police community relations, though, maintaining safety as well as maintaining safety as well as people in the community being happy with the relationships between police as well as the community, and funding that will help in terms of educational, recreational sports, police athletic leagues as well too, to be able to bring the community together, recruitment for minority policing as well too, and placement in some of the neighborhoods as well too, making sure that we can have the safety of a cop on the block that knows the kids on the block. And that way we have positive interactions though. People want to be safe. I had gone and took a tour through all of the major neighborhoods in this congressional district, from Hunters Creek to South Chase, Whisper Lakes, all the way down to the Windermere area, Bay Hill, where Tiger Woods plays, and Winter Garden. I passed Paramore and I passed Silver Star Road. And about an hour after I passed Silver Star Road, a 78-year-old grandfather went into a CVS to get his prescriptions. He came out, he was carjacked, he was shot, he was driven over twice by two young individuals, a 19-year-old boy, a 25-year-old girl. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they both had clean records.
Wow.
It's just a shame too. But we want to make sure we have safety, but also maybe, the education employment system has to recruit even harder than the gangbanger system. That makes people think that they just want to throw their life away to maybe rob somebody, and it gets out of hand, and then you shoot them and you run them over, you're trying to escape. but just to throw you, I mean, think twice. You would hope that one person with a clean record would have talked the other person out with out of doing it with a clean record. Like, what happened to the friend with the clean record that taught you how to do something stupid? And here you got two people with clean records that threw their lives away and took the life of somebody else, though. But working to make sure that we can do things to bring down crime, that we can have accountability. We can also have training, diversity in the police force, improve relations. And even cops are working with the community in terms of recreational things, and getting to know, and police coming to schools to speak as well too. Like the police and the firemen come to the school, recruit and talk to the students, develop that relationship, and the police captain has a relationship with the community leaders, the churches, the organizations in the community as well too. So trying to bring all of that together. And I think even some of the things that we have to do in the corporate world, diversity training, once a year certifications for sexual harassment, discrimination. So things like that, though, within the police force, if they're not doing it, they should be doing as well, too. And I think there's a lot of good that can come out of it, though.
I want to keep going into these audience questions. And as we go toward the end of the interview, again, Jeff Boone for Congress.com. Jeff, we'll go through some of these audience questions quick. What is your take on the $15 minimum wage? My thing is we need to set a minimum wage, and it's not going to happen under this governor. Hopefully we get a Democratic governor this year that will put something like this in place. The $15 is good to start, but we need to kind of increase that wage with the inflation rate. Do you agree with something like that as far as the state of Florida? Because the business community obviously is against these issues.
Yeah, well, it definitely pegging it to something like inflation, but you're going to make sure that one isn't pushing the other. The wage, inflation, but the wage, and they just keep going back and forth, or a vicious cycle right there, though. But you want to make sure also that we have a wage, like say $15, that allows people to be self-sufficient, not be working poor or worse. Somebody who's truly trying to work, not trying to be on financial assistance, government assistance, be self-sufficient, support their family, but it's not making enough to be able to do that, though, and living below the poverty line by having a minimum wage that keeps people living below the poverty line, because then we're really creating the working poor right there. So we have to be able to have a wage that has some self-sufficiency in it. And if it's the $15 wage, then obviously business will adjust itself too, because the law of supply and demand and economics, and so there might be adjustments there in terms of the number of workers that businesses will have, because they make adjustments for that, as well as the extra cost of labor. Okay. Democrats need to work on the messaging of it.
Right.
That's the important part. Like we talked about, go in the room, shut the door, cut off the air conditioning, nobody can leave, and we come out of here unified. Everybody scream, shout, throw pots and pans, and then you walk out of that room and everybody vote as a block the same way the Republicans do. That's what we need to do, and get our messaging to our people so that we understand where we are on the issue and the ramifications of having it a certain way at a $15 level. It may have some ramifications on employment as well too, but also can have effects on inflation. One pushes the other, but we have to have messaging that's better. So that way we all understand. So that way you and I, we're talking about right now, we're probably going to be the ones to create the message.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. The Democratic messaging, whether it's Congress, Florida, wherever you want to talk about it, is a disaster, pretty much. Right. I mean, it's just really terrible. We need to have candidates such as yourself that try to critique and fix the message in general, because otherwise it's just going to be loss after loss after loss. I just wanted to get into the follow-up on this. The Orlando Sentinel did do an article back about 2 years ago. It's a huge article. It was a couple days long, where they did this story about, people living in downtown Orlando and Orlando area in general, Windermere, of course, near Disney, and even in the Orlando area in general, because obviously Orlando is a big place that worked for Disney. And some of them, are making $15 an hour. And we also got to think back, everybody, and the Republicans, again, have the great messaging for this, that they say, 15 is too much. We also have to think that $15 an hour for a company like Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, and the Publix, these other big companies in Florida, it's only $32,000 a year.
Right.
You're not making like 70 or 90 or 120 grand. you're making barely $32,000, and that's barely probably enough to make ends meet with inflation and all the other issues now. It's probably
Right.
not going to do that. So I think people have to kind of do the math, because we are a country, unfortunately, and I suck at math, and I'll throw myself in there personally, is not good at math. We're not a country that's good at mathematics, and people don't realize that $32,000 is that $15 an hour for 40 hours a week. So,
That's part of the messaging. Give them the
right.
simple math.
I
Like you
hear
just
you.
said, $15 an hour equates to 32,000. Imagine of a parent or two parents trying to take care of a family of at least four, your two kids and so forth, though. And the challenges there in terms of finding affordable housing, in terms of being able to put food on the table, schooling. Public school is probably more right there. You're probably left towards public school. Private school is a financial challenge as well, too, right there. That 32,000, there's 64,000 between two parents right there. So,
and those people don't want to be on assistance, Jeff, if they're working
no,
40 hours.
yeah.
Those people are trying to work hard, and we have these people that say, oh, they want to be on food stamps. No, they don't. But they can't, because maybe that's the only job they can get right now. Maybe that's a job that they've been in for quite a few years, and maybe they might get a pension down the road.
Right.
I know at Disney and some of these companies, if you're in there for 20 some odd years, you may get a small stipend, a pension, whatever it may be. So maybe they just enjoy their job. You know what I'm saying? There's all these code words on the news, and people in general. They call these people slackers and losers, and people that don't want to work. It's just fake news. It's not true.
That's true. That's true. I think people generally want to work, and they want to have safe working conditions, and also looking for a solid wage.
Last question of the interview, and I appreciate your time. Again, for people that are listening, again, it's Jeff Boone for Congress.com. We talked about the housing boom, and there's, people, I think they said that there was about 1,000 people. I listened to this on Florida Politics. They have a podcast, and they said about 1,000 people are moving to Florida every day. And obviously we need to build houses for these people, schools, the list goes on and on. I'm starting to worry about environmental issues in this state. We hear about the stories of the manatees. Over 1,000 have died just this year. I mean, it's horrendous. I mean, this is Florida wildlife. We're also seeing a lot of green spaces all over the state are terrible. I'm worried about, and I went to college down in South Florida and in Palm Beach County. I know what Palm Beach and Broward and Miami-Dade look like. They got a shopping mall at every street corner, and there's that very few areas of wildlife besides maybe the Everglades. I'm worried about Orlando and Osceola, Polk County, Lake County, just turning into like Broward and Miami-Dade and Palm Beach, where there's just shopping malls everywhere. There's no scenic areas anymore. And we're just going to build houses wherever we can find land. Are you worried about those issues? And in Congress, will you do something to make sure that we preserve some of these beautiful areas of the state of Florida?
Yeah, we have to have the balance between preservation of the wildlife, which is important as well too, environmental concerns, obviously climate, and then also the progress of development too, and making sure that we do have some building, because we've got people concerned about affordable housing. Where are you going to put it? Where are you going to put it? You got to put it somewhere, right? We're making sure that we don't tear up some habitats and so forth to do it, though. So there's the one thing I see in Central Florida where we are. There's plenty of space. Okay. It's not like Miami where everything has to be built vertically. We're still building horizontally. So just making sure we're balancing that, and also looking at the sensitivities of the community as well too, the residents there as well too. So that's the one thing I learned when I was in New York and I served on the community planning board for Manhattan. Resident concerns, land use, where you're developing stores and so forth, though. Making sure you're building a beautiful community in which everybody feels like they're engaged with it, though, and they're on board. I mean, the last thing you want to do is build something that nobody wants to move in, and the community's up in arms, and you got people protesting and so forth, though. That's not good for the developer. So Developers have to work with communities. And they develop, and they have to think about schools. You have to think about how close are you to jobs. Not having a place where you got a lot of housing and jobs are so far away. Okay, now we got problem, and then we got traffic and so forth though as well too. So all the impact fees that you have to think about. So, but that's the good part with people coming together. And then, like I said, when the circles interact, though, that's where you get down to collective bargaining.
Well, we're hoping that these I-4 issues with the I-4 project get solved fairly soon. I know they're working at a turtle's play pace, but they're getting a little bit, they're getting a little bit done at a time, but they're getting it done, thank God, because we definitely need to, get these highways, with less traffic. I mean, it's a disaster 4 or 5 o'clock sometimes. If you're coming from downtown Orlando, it's pretty tough. But anyways,
we have a good problem. We live in a place that a lot of people want to move to.
That's true. That's true.
Property values, right?
That's true. Property values. So lastly, Jeff, what do you hope people learn from this interview?
Well, just have a chance to kind of get to know me, my personality, having a chance to interact back and forth with you and discuss politics as well too. Talk about my platform in terms of my business experience, utilizing that for the public and private sector working together, kind of staying on the basics of education, job training, employment, housing, community relations, police community relations, though. Saying that over and over again, trying to improve the quality of life for one end of the district to the other, making sure in this post-COVID economy that the rising tide that lifts all boats also lifts the life rafts of the poor and impoverished as well too, and that we can maintain Orlando's prosperity and safety, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, I'll get that right now, Jeff. Again, for people that were listening, that was Jeff Boone. He's running for Congress, Congressional District 10 over in Florida, Val Deming's old seat. Jeff, thanks so much for your time. Jeff Boone for Congress.com. Definitely check him out. I appreciate your time today, Jeff. Let's do this again sometime.
Yes, Rob, anytime. Just give me a shout. Thank you.